I want to make sure that he knows that we were very respectful of his privacy. I'm not some crazy person. This is for a film.
The buzz around the mysteries has been surprisingly quiet. I'm seeing a few YouTube reviews, some articles recapping the making of video, which, by the way, should be a bigger deal in its own right. As far as I know, this is the only instance we have of Bill Watterson's voice on record.
We set off looking for surprises, and we got them every day. So, be careful what you ask for.
People around my age, the older millennial demographic, we tend to get so goddamn touchy-feely about Calvin and Hobbes that we kind of lose sight of the material itself in our own self-aggrandizing reminiscence over it.
Bill Watterson, please don't fear me. Don't run from me like I'm Jason. I only want to try your face on.
We've spent the last 20-something years wishing Bill Watterson would come back and publish something, anything, and now he has. And the only people who seem to care are people who didn't really grow up with Calvin and Hobbes. I suppose it's a bit like wrestling fans insisting that the punchy, kicky matches of the Attitude Era were more athletic than the more athletic matches that dominate modern wrestling. They don't really love wrestling. What they love is idealized memories of their own childhood. They believe that by sheer wild coincidence, they stopped making good movies, music, and video games the very day we graduated high school. Anyway, I'm not here to shit on the culturally uncurious. Well, I am, but there's no future in YouTube shorts, so I'm gonna have to fill the rest of this video with a review of the mysteries. First of all, I love this book. I love the strange, dreamy visuals, blending painting, photography, sculpture, and I don't know what else in these eerie collages. I love the emphasis on characters and objects emerging from dark backdrops, like in Goya's black paintings. John Kascht's caricatures are the beating heart of this book. These are full clay sculptures with deep wrinkles to catch light and shadow for these expressive, haunting portraits. My favorite is The Wizard. I love the intangible terror of the images and the storytelling. The mysteries are never seen by the reader. We get these paintings in the museum, but it's clear that this isn't what they actually look like, with the narration suggesting them to be artifacts of a more superstitious time. There's an Edgar Allan Poe story, Silence, a Fable. A demon attempts to scare this random dude with storms and wind and thunder, and nothing seems to be working until he silences everything. And it's the sudden peace and quiet that finally scares the man. I think The Mysteries accomplishes a similar effect. The terror is not a presence but an absence. If this is a fable, there's a moral to be drawn from it, and I think it's pretty clear what the book is saying. But let's address what it's not saying. There's a reading of this story as a simple parable for global warming in that it deals with man dominating his environment followed by his own doom. I suppose that's one interpretation of it, but to boil it down to a single metaphor, I think is to fall into the very trap the story warns us of. That is, an intolerance of the intangible. You want this book to be simple and precise, so you read it as being about one thing in particular. Watterson and Kascht spent a full year kind of noodling about, experimenting and prodding without actually producing anything usable. If they were only after a simple finger-wagging metaphor about global warming, if they only wanted to produce an illustrated lecture, I don't think there would have been such an extensive feeling out process. If you're a Calvin and Hobbes fan, the book isn't quite as left field a project as you might think it to be. Watterson used every anthology collection as an excuse to do something like this. The themes and subjects of the mysteries are even alluded to in A Nauseous Nocturne from The Essential Calvin and Hobbes, an illustrated poem about monsters under the bed that likewise forgoes literal illustration for ambiguous hints. Eyes in the dark, slithering tales, all filtered through Calvin's vivid imagination. Watterson has always been more interested in the human response to boogeymen than he is in the specifics of the creatures themselves. That's something we don't see much in horror art these days. With 4K 60 FPS digital film and an army of CG sweatshoppers in India, why would you present a monster as anything but a literal head-to-toe on-screen depiction? That's how everyone else is doing it. You don't want audiences to say you just couldn't afford good monster effects, right? Isn't this so much scarier than this? A few days after reading it, The Mysteries has had an effect a bit like when Twin Peaks: The Return came out. We're so conditioned to content lately that it can be a bit of a stunner when we encounter art. I mean, new art in a commercial format. Not something tucked safely away in a museum where it can be preserved, studied, admired. but not exactly experienced. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.